Let's make sure we protect each other's mental space. If you ever need me, just call. I'ma come running, give it my all. Love is love, God wins. Keep your vibrations high and watch how your blessings. Yeah. When you don't know what you're gonna do, and you're down and out, they're there for you. They be at the spot, they care for you. Oh, where for you? Yeah, they there for you. When you got good news, they win with you. Got your different views, still in with you. They stay with you, every day for you. Through the highs and lows, they stay for you. Oh, it's so nice to feel appreciated, and to know that it's real. We're gonna fight every fight as a collective. We're gonna do just what's right as a collective. We're gonna move as one, never quit till it's done. Stay focused and selective, Atlas Collective. Through the stormy skies, they fight for you. When the world denies, they lie for you. They rock with you, on the block with you. Yes, they tick-tock and lock with you. When things go wrong, they there for you. You haven't known them long, and they're there for you. Always standing strong, they stand with you. So grand with you, yeah, they band with you. Oh, it's so nice to feel appreciated, and to grow something real. We're gonna fight every fight as a collective. We're gonna do just what's right as a collective. We're gonna move as one, never quit till it's done. Stay focused and selective, Atlas Collective. We're gonna fight every fight as a collective. We're gonna do just what's right as a collective. We're gonna move as one, never quit till it's done. Stay focused and selective, Atlas Collective. Fight as a collective, do what's right as a collective. Move as one, won't quit till it's done. Focused and selective, Atlas Collective. It's so nice to feel appreciated, and to know that it's real. We're gonna fight every fight as a collective. We're gonna do just what's right as a collective. We're gonna move as one, never quit till it's done. Stay focused and selective, Atlas Collective. Stay focused and selective, Atlas Collective.
Look, that's what I want to talk about today. It's like through different variations of bloodlines and different variations of things that's taking place down here right now. Like right now, the Maju bloodline, or like it's like a King Arthur bloodline that's is taking place, and nobody really understands like what the Aquarius sky is. No one understands these things that's taking place inside the vessel right now, but there's a lot of things that's taking place inside your body right now. in this time. It's different timelines, but all of this is taking place inside the mind of the multitude. It's a conscious network, fragments of different variations of things. But you'll get into like the mind control of it, stuff like that, how they operate, mind control. These different things. It comes with the discernment. Like you have to know, like the spirit of Christ or what is Christ. It's a consciousness, so on and so forth. The vessels are going to do what the vessels do. The body's going to do what the body does. The lower vibrations, the things that you need, eating, all of that stuff. But there is, something that is moving right now through the collective. And you might not be able to point it out, you might not be able to grasp it, you might not even be able to understand it, but it's there, it's there. And a lot of people might not recognize it or be able to, you know, point it out. But this is where I say, like, people don't understand like the development of this, how to take over these different things that tries to control our vessel, right? Being a service to others, right? And increasing communication and developing the spirit of Christ. This is where that comes in when it says, you know, these are the things that I try to develop the most upon is literally being a service to others, you know, increasing communication, developing this spirit of Christ with inside to further develop an understanding for the mind and the consciousness. We can understand the body all we want. A lot of people understand the body. The body is here, the body does what the body does. A lot of people understand that. A lot of people understand the body, right? And when you start to try to figure out like your shadow self and understanding like these different variations of things, you have to figure out like the reversal to this, like for every 72 demon that's of the soul of man, there's 72 angels. But how do figure out what are the 72 angels versus what are the 72 demons? It said, on Jacob's ladder, the angels was moving up and down the ladders. That's the old body. We don't even have the understanding for what that means when it says the angels was moving up and down the ladders. So they took a lot of knowledge out and replaced it. How do we put that knowledge back? How do we get that knowledge back? Because it's not like that knowledge is being broadcast on a higher scale. Hold on. Let's go into this one. I'm trying to help like to get to a point where we understand, consciousness, right? Conscious development, like these different variations of confusion, confusing the human race, so on and so forth. This is something that was brought along. You got to study the law of structure. This is where demonic spirits come in, right? You got to have discernment for all of this stuff. When you're feeding the houses of ego, so on and so forth, this is where all of that stuff exists at. Narcissism, people start operating with coercions of the heart. People that operate like that, narcissistic people, they operate like that. They'll try to tie themselves to your journey, make it seem like you're on their path, or tie you to them and make it seem like, unless they make it, you can't make it. All types of things of that nature, you got to be careful for. You got to be careful for all types of things of that nature. Because this happens in the world. This is why you got to have like a moral compass. I would say you got to have a moral compass in this world more than anything. Just take a listen.
The study of moral code and living within spiritual ethics are clearly and sorely required with imparting spiritual truth, as many abuses are easily unnoticed.
Y'all can hear that good?
We have programmed in three
Can y'all hear that
phases of
good?
society. All of these behavioral checkpoints are our personal responsibility, and it does not matter how advanced the consciousness template is. If this part of our ego wounds have not been cleared and healed, it will be infected and used against us. This becomes increasingly important as more spiritual power and spiritual resources are given by spiritual light intelligence. The more spiritual and consciousness power we embody, the more responsibility we have to be ethical, moral, transparent, honest, and aligned to the intent, consent, and authority of service to God, service to others. The issue is that, when we give it our very best every day, when we live from our heart and ask what we can do to serve God and oneness towards a goal of world humanism, a humanitarian philosophy such as the law of one, we get the ego out of the driver's seat, and we pay heed to Christian-based ethics without all the dogma, ego, and judgment, and our behavioral guideline is genuinely clarified. In the Christ principle, what would the Christ do? How would the Christ behave? What is my responsibility in this moment to be true to my heart and to live ethically and in harmony with life? This behavior will ultimately protect you, and this seems to be a gaping hole missed throughout many spiritual teachings due to unethical, untrustworthy, and immoral personal conduct. Their hearts turn black from misconduct. For those reasons they have my deepest empathy in every way, with the hope they all find the path to inner peace and freedom from actually living in heart alignment to what they have spoken of in their spiritual teachings.
Now I want you guys to
Those
think
of
about
us that are
this,
here
right?
have been called to help support the Christ
If we was in a world
mission.
where
We
this,
are being entrusted to hold more consciousness
all of
awareness
this,
and learn how to help
if
return the
this,
planetary
if we were in
architecture
a
back to
world
human
where
and
this
Christ
was,
consciousness,
put out there, the knowledge of consciousness, right? The frequency of consciousness, right? And we would have the knowledge of this through the law of vibration. We will understand what consciousness is, how to develop this consciousness, right? We will take the time to study the ascension process that comes with disciplining the mind, right? But this knowledge ain't out there. At least it's not out there on a scale to where as though like this is something that they teaching in school. Like maybe if they put this knowledge back into schools, the schools will be more, advanced or something. Because I want you guys to think about this. Our level of teaching has not changed since the 50s. Our level of teaching has not changed. If you look at the same patterns for school, it's the same. They're gonna do the play, the Fiddler on the Roof play. They're gonna do the play, the stories, Helen Keller, Anne Frank, all of that stuff. They doing them same storylines for the last 30 something years. There's been the same type of teaching in America. The same. Our teaching is not evolving. What they're teaching our kids is not evolving. Remember, there was nothing beyond the Milky Way. There was only the 10 planets that was in our solar system, supposedly. Now, come to find out, there's 88 constellations in the sky. How in the 90s they was teaching us this and that, and now they saying Saturn has so many moons. In the 90s, they was Pluto was a planet. Now turns out Pluto's not a planet. Well, it's a dwarf planet. How is we doing all of this evolution stuff? What's going on? How are we doing all of this evolution stuff, but then you come to a point where there's no evolving? All of this talk of evolution, and then you get to the point where there's no evolving. you know? It just ain't making sense. So you got to do this with inside yourself. You know what I mean? You have to discipline your mind and do all of this inside yourself. You know, meditation is something that you do with inside yourself. A constant meditative practice is what you do inside yourself. Like there's a way to meditate with inside yourself, right? It's thought patterns, right? This is what I keep on telling. What we keep saying over here. What do we keep repeating over here about patterns? Listen to this. Listen to this.
Consistent meditation practice is helpful in training an undisciplined and cluttered mind to develop higher consciousness. Meditation can be applied in many different techniques and is helpful for facilitating forgiveness and letting go of negativity in many forms. In the early stages of developing meditation skill, sit and relax and learn to observe thoughts passing through without having attachment to them. Once you notice the thought pattern, let it go and bring your focus back to the now moment. 2.
You see that? A lot of people get caught in those thought patterns, right? A lot of people get caught in the thought patterns. So a lot of people, they see these thought patterns, they see the thought passing through, but they get caught in the pattern of those thoughts. They don't know how to let it go and bring themselves back to the now moment. They don't know how to let that thought go and then bring themselves back to the now moment. Realize that that thought is not them, or that, you know, certain things, you know, this is where thought ran wild, as you would say, right? So perspective, belief, all of this stuff falls a victim into that, right? So a man thinketh, so shall it be, right? So once you come to the realization that all thoughts are not your thoughts, right? Thoughts are just passing through, right? You can concentrate on a thought and let it go and go back to something that is yours, right? Or remind yourself what's yours and what's not yours, even when it comes to thinking pattern, because you're creating this behavioratory measure with this thinking pattern. It's like, think about it. If somebody's always talking and communicating about lust and greed, that becomes their thinking pattern. That becomes their thinking pattern. If somebody's always talking about stealing, right, or theft, right, that's their thinking pattern. They're showing these different variations of thinking patterns. And you could see, you could sit there and listen. You could sit there and choose not to talk and take heed to different human patterns. But thought has its own variation of patterns of exposing itself of how people think. When someone only can point out the negative, that means they think negative, right? When someone only points out this variation of things, that's a thinking pattern. And I'm not saying that you don't point it out sometimes, right? I'm not saying that you might not speak of it sometimes, right? But we're talking about behaviors, right? Human behavior. Human behavior has a pattern. You can exhibit this pattern of human behavior throughout the history of mankind. Throughout the history of mankind, they have always told us about ourselves. They always warned us about ourselves. It was a pattern. Humans destroy. Humans break. Humans tear down. Mankind is not of that notion of consciousness where we realize we don't have to do that. It's going all the way back to the galactic wars, going all the way back to Lyra, to the Lyra constellation, going all the way back to, you know, you would have to have, you know, that expansion of consciousness in order to understand that level, right? Realizing that you are energy, realizing that energy never dies, realizing the repetitive things that have taken place down here among Earth, right? And this goes with the linear thinking, right? One can expand their consciousness because we are used to linear thinking. Whereas though throughout the history, we have been told or taught to think a certain way, and now we can't get out of that. We can't get out of that. So some people have developed a way to get out of that linear thinking, and you see they're putting their minds in all types of places, you know. But when you're trapped in those three layers of ego, like you're gonna have to deal with a lot of this, right? But the linear thinking is what's stopping us. This is the thinking that's getting passed down in generations. This is generational thinking right here. History of what we think is supposed to be.
Linear thinking is the process of thought following known step-by-step progression where a response to a step must be elicited before another step is taken. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3. Linear thinkers put things in order as they experience them in a sequential manner, like a straight line. A straight line between 2 points has been the way we have been educated as the most effective way to get from one place to another. Linear thinkers see the world mostly as black and white, the polarity structure or bi-wave influences. A person limited to linear thinking has mental blocks in reaching more options for resolution or reaching compromise because they cannot perceive outside a certain parameter. An example of limitation in linear thinking is the capacity to creatively problem-solve an issue if the primary procedure breaks down, to find alternative ways, to inquire or ask the right question in the problem-solving equation, or to find the balance point for resolution. Additionally, linear thinkers do not communicate with the consciousness inherent in living things, like the land, animals, and nature. Because linear thinking is repetitious and in many situations the outcome or result never changes, this stunts higher sensory perception and suppresses consciousness. The mind gets stuck in a gear of belief and linear experience that it cannot shift out of. The more inflexible the mind, the weaker it is. Most people perceive the external structures of reality based on information conveyed by their main senses, which is their operating sentience level. Some people have 5 main senses that are controlled by their unconscious mind functions, and others with developed higher sensory perception have accumulated more sensory ability by expanding their access into their higher mind function. If sensory information is missing, partially blocked, or misunderstood through wrong perception, people impose their semblance of linear order without the benefit of all the proper information. This is assuming something to be true and accurate while holding only the tiniest infinitesimal variable that prevents one from seeing the whole facts or larger picture. Purely linear thinking ultimately confines the intelligence to the lower aspects of mind and lower instinctual senses. Linear thinking contracts energy. Linear thinking contracts consciousness and limits expanded sensory feelings such as intuition. Thought-addicted linear thinkers close down their heart, and this closes down their body feeling mechanism.
See that? It's a lot of stuff that comes with linear thinking, right? A lot of stuff that comes with that. It's the development of how we think. Someone has structured a biological wave that influences the way we think, right? And this biological wave has created a pattern within our thinking. That means like a person has to do something bad, get punished, and then learn the proper way to do it, right? That's a pattern of behavior. People will repeat that pattern. It's just like people tell you, do it wrong. Oh, now you have to learn this way. So they try to make you do something, make you fail, and then act like they got you through it, right? They'll put an obstacle in your way, and then when you ask them for the help, they act like but the obstacle wouldn't have been there if they ain't put it in your way, if they didn't, you know what I mean? So this has become a pattern to where as though that's a learning pattern now, where adults are literally like, nah, go ahead. They got to learn first. They got to learn from their mistakes because that's what they had to do. So because we had to do it, now we created a pattern of this level of learning, not learning through the parents' mistakes, not learning through better. Nope. Keep them in the unknown and then let them make the mistakes so they can learn from it. They got to learn from their mistakes. Right? So we got to break that. Somehow we got to break that, but we got to be an exemplary of that, of which is break. That's on a collective scale, not individually, not individually. Collectively, we got to be able to let everyone tell their own story. Collectively, we got to let everyone stand in their own truth. Some people's truth might align with other people's truth, but even if their truth don't align with your truth, you can't just shun their truth. You can't just shun their truth. You can't just be like, oh, well, I don't want to live in that truth. It don't exist. No.
Nonlinear thinkers have developed a capacity for spiral thinking and problem solving which extends into multiple directions or as an outward expansion spiral. Rather than thinking in step-by-step moving in one direction, spiral thinkers inherently know that there are multiple starting points from which one can apply the solution to a problem. Spiral thinkers are able to traverse the many directions the problem may have and find the central root or causal issue of the problem, rather than trying to solve the surface symptom.
See?
Most world problems have a causation of which many layers of other problems are stacked on top in layers as the result. This is the same as a medical diagnosis giving a label to something that does not address the deeper cause and its root infection. Most linear thinking keeps the mind sliding on the surface, going back and forth and finally in a circle which remains static.
Yeah, but when
Nonlinear or spiral thinking allows the mind to go deeper to the root of the problem, spiral it out in multiple directions from its source, which is the most effective way to impact deeper resolution and change. Spiral thinkers are accessing beyond the functions of the
here's why it's
three layers of ego mind.
explained.
They access a new higher sensory ability through the contact made to the higher mind, which is a function of higher consciousness or spirit energy intelligence. Training your mind to go beyond linear thought and into nonlinear thinking expands energy, expands consciousness, and potentially opens one's heart and feeling centers.
Okay, so here's the thing about it, right? You have these different variations of, the higher mind. You try to attack a problem from multiple different ways, right? A spiral thinker is someone who's going to look at it, one time, and they're going to analyze the multiple different ways and levels and layers that this can go wrong, right? Linear thinking is going to keep on attacking the problem the same way, hoping that it changes, like brute force, right? So that's how you look at it. In this reality, we have a brute force concept of reality. It's colonized, it's in the soil, if you would say, right? But someone who's not in that linear thinking type mindset, right? They're able to look at the multiple layers of it in order to try to fix it on the multiple layer level that it's on, as opposed to the surface level that it's on, right? Some people only see the surface level. They're trapped in different variations of the ego, right? So you have different variations of this ego, and people get trapped in that ego, right? Some people will never see past it because the layers of it. It's the first layer is a hard drive. This conscious level, it enters the physical matter. That's the hard drive of it. A lot of people won't get past that. They don't even get into, instinctual desires is where people are trapped in also. The instinctual desires is your instincts, your instincts, natural instincts, right? These desires that people get stuck in, they'll never get past that, right? Those first three levels, right? They'll never get past it in order to reach the conscious mind, right? A lot of people don't know how to reach that conscious mind. But once you reach that conscious mind, there's a beyond, certain variations of beyond that, right? So when you have the birth, soul, and so on and so forth, this is the seed. This is something that is inside of all of us. Some people get stuck in the variations of things, right, that are in these chakra systems, in these lower halves of self, right? The ego of it all. The houses of ego. Some people build in their houses of ego. Some people build in these houses. So these houses that they build in, down here, these first 3 levels, root chakra, solar plex chakra, soul chakra, these houses that are built here, this is where they're trapped at, right here, in this area, right? But see, if you get up here, this is where the astral mind is. This is where you get to the collective race mind, right? And when you get to the astro plane, you realize that the collective race mind is trapped. So you have a choice. You could choose to try to help the collective. You could choose to get stuck in that. A lot of people are stuck in this astro mind. A lot of people are stuck in the astral plane, right? And when you get to the ascension process and you realize this, you realize like, damn, there's a lot of people stuck in the astral plane. You can hear them in the astral plane. You can hear them. Everybody's in conversation. Everybody is coercing. Everybody is loud up there. But a lot of people don't go up that way. A lot of people don't go into the astral plane. You might think that you astral project. They might tell you a story of what they heard astral projecting is down here based off of the lies of the multitude that's down here. But astral projecting is way different than what people think it is, right? And then once you go beyond that into different variations of, the celestial mind, monarch, these things can take place within a matter of, an hour, 30 seconds. It happens real fast sometimes when you travel. Time doesn't really exist up there in the higher realm. So when you get back down here, different variations of time lapses could take place down here with the understanding of these different variations of oneself. But when you get to these higher realms, you can come back with a vast variety of knowledge in a split second, depending on, how you go up, how you ascend. Some people are still struggling, and this is where that spiral thinking comes in, because some people are still struggling with, carnal desires, revenge, envy, hurt, pain, all these different things that live in the lower realms, people are struggling with. But when you get to the higher realms, it's different. It's different in the higher realms, right? Down here, we struggle with a lot of stuff because we get caught up in, these titles. We get caught up in the human experience. We get caught up in, those things, you know what I mean? But once you get to the higher realms, that don't exist in the higher realms, right? In the higher realms, you go through a different variation of knowledge, wisdom, understanding, right? Skipping forward in timeline as we change the focus of our consciousness, right? So once you realize you develop a consciousness, you're growing in that consciousness, then you start stretching and expanding that consciousness, or what is consciousness, right? And then other people start becoming a part of your conscious. It's the collective, right? Your conscious collective, right? So other people become a part of that consciousness, right? And if you operating on pure and good intent, you can start affecting the people within that conscious that you are a part of, right? So if you are operating on pure intent, you might be a part of the 5% of that conscious, or the 1%, whatever y'all want to call it, right? You might be a part of the hierarchy of that conscious if you expand your conscious, right? Once you start expanding, then you start realizing like, oh, okay, it's multiple layers, right? When you realize you might be in a hierarchy, you can test the level of your influence in that hierarchy just through mind and mental expansion, right? You don't have to go anywhere for that. It's just through a mind and a level of mental expansion. Yes, it's going to pull certain people to you. yes, certain variations of personas might seek you out on this plane, right? But really, the battle is within inside of you. So you don't really have to fight nothing outside of you because you'll realize the galactic core. You'll realize the connection that you have with the universe. So therefore, the fight becomes, off planet, if you would say, right? So you're using a notion of what is, always was, and always will be. Some people might call it magic. Some people might call it a ritual. Some people, it's different names for it. People gonna come up and all types of names will come out for what is, always was, and always will be. But once you start skipping around these timelines, right, you can operate in other dimensions and stuff like that. So when you start moving through dimensions and moving through these timelines, right, this is when you start, changing the variations of things that's going on down here. But you're moving through different variations of timelines that exist. You're moving through these different variations of timelines that exist down here on this plane. What the hell? You gotta go. You don't want to go backwards. You want to act like you don't remember the page. You don't remember the page. You don't remember the page. What about this page? All right, so this is what I'm saying. Like, it's 12 strands of DNA, 12 different variations of strands of DNA consciousness. This is where the consciousness of the planet comes in, right? And people want to live in the personal consciousness, right? But when you get into the collective consciousness, that's when you realize the connection that all things have. The 12 tribes, 12 strands, 12 zodiac signs, 12 laws of the universe, the 12 within the 12 that makes up the 144. And then when you break it down into the very, very, basic molecules of it, this is when you get into the atom cell and the DNA and the assembling of the DNA and so on and so forth, right? So during the Atlantic cataclysm and the events that took place during that cataclysm, right, this was where the knowledge was fought for. This was where certain variations of information was dictated, determined, or whatever. This is when we became like the prison planet, if you would say, right? Atlantis was full of knowledge when they started sharing that knowledge with Mu, which is Lemuria. This is when, Lemuria decided to, disguise a plan in order to go, steal this knowledge. But Atlantis already had an agreement with the gods in order to, keep peace. In order for knowledge, they gave up, war and fighting for knowledge. They gave up, what we consider, these war games for knowledge, for wisdom, right? But the Lemurians, Athenians, whatever you want to call it, they were determined, no, that's not it. We want the knowledge and we want war, a battle absurd, whatever you want to call it. Now, these fragments is in your stations of identity. So these fragments of knowledge is in your stations of identity. So when you're rising in your kundalini, you're having this kundalini extension of the kundalini, right, which known as, the ascension process, right, this extension of the kundalini that's rising up your spine. You go through these different variations of fights within inside yourself. Now, some of these fights within the spirit self will manifest in the pain body, and then you would have to deal with a physical form of what that spiritual expression of yourself is. This could meet you through the form of somebody new. This can meet you through the form of somebody old, right? A new person can pop up in your life, and you might be thinking, what is this person is popping up in your life for, so on and so forth? It's because this is the spiritual expression of whatever it is that you're going through. It could be a lesson in it, it could be something. And then when a lot of people get to a certain point, they meet a narcissistic physical expression of this reality, right? Because this is when you have to deal with the godlike complex of yourself, right? So when you're dealing with the godlike complex of yourself, or whether you want to call it like your dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it, you might possibly manifest a narcissistic persona, as above, so below. So in the physical world, you might manifest a narcissistic persona of oneself, right? Because we're all connected to each other, right? So you might manifest this, right? And a lot of times you try to get along with that narcissistic persona of oneself, right? But that narcissistic persona of oneself has a different, take on what's taking place, right? They might want to present themselves as a savior, right? They might want to make you need them, right? They're not going to teach you, they're not investing in what it is that you believe in or anything like that. They want to have a certain variation of control over you, to where as though you see them as, something more, right? So a lot of times when we run into these different personas of ourselves, we keep on dealing with them with kindness, and they keep on doing what it is that they do, which is taking kindness for weakness. We deal with them with the level of, whatever you want to call it, but they're looking at it like, yeah, I got them right where I want them, this is that and the third. Next thing you know, you driving yourself crazy because you're dealing with them with kindness and love and so on and so forth. But take a listen to this.
Previous to the Atlantean cataclysm, each of the groups of the angelic human 12 Essene tribes were entrusted as guardians of a section of the Emerald Founder records, which held extensive consciousness knowledge about the star origins and genetic template information that was recorded on 12 holographic discs. All 12 genetic components of the 12 tribes hold one strand of DNA code for reassembling the crystal gene for the diamond sun body or silicate matrix, that is key-coded to activate the 12 layers of the planetary Stargate system. This provides the means to contact our higher stations of identity as spiritual bodies, and to connect with the conscious living light and sound frequencies in the holographic matrix. The instruction sets to rebuild and reassemble the 12-strand DNA pattern are held in the genetic keys found in the cosmic crystalla blueprint, which makes up the 12-tree grid manifestation template. Through the individual and planetary spiritual ascension process that takes place during several root race evolution cycles, the integration and healing of all 12 levels of DNA coding through its genetic components potentially unite and merge to form the complete silicate matrix. These dual forces of polarity, male and female, are designed to spiritually integrate and synthesize within the angelic human body while naturally evolving on the ascending earth. As a result of the forces of alchemy and energetic synthesis made between inner and outer layers of these multidimensional consciousness forces, the spiritual embodiment of the original 12-strand DNA of the diamond sun body is then made available to the planet and humanity through DNA assembly. Thus, ascending individuals are gradually repairing and regenerating their DNA template so they are able to open and move through stargates safely. The diamond sun body represents full consciousness freedom for an ascending human being, in which the inner Christos is fully activated with the flowering of the sacred crystal heart. As a result, the spiritually ascending human is able to transmute their consciousness out of time and into 0 point, moving through stargates into another location. Therefore, they are free to leave the prison planet, freed from the enforced mind control and reincarnation cycle occurring in the lowest density of Earth.
See that? They are free from the mind control and reincarnation cycle occurring in the lowest density of the earth. That is this physical plane that we live on. This physical plane that we live on is the lower density of this earth, right? And when you reach a certain level of consciousness that allows you to push past that, you are free to leave this lower half, right? The incarnation half, right? Now, the incarnates, they don't want you to get past this. This, because they're in a cycle of reincarnating down here in this lower half, right? But they don't want you to ascend past that, right? But something's taking place in the world right now where we are evolving and expanding in consciousness, and it is forcing us to awaken to the higher realms or higher variations of oneself. You know, something is forcing us, and we're fighting against it. We're fighting against it, and the reason why, personally, you are trying to push forward personally, right? But it's like a fish going upstream, right? In a world full of people, a billion people, but think about it, it's 9 billion people on this planet right now, and only a few consciousnesses are swimming upstream, right? Everybody else is swimming downstream, going with the flow, right? Now you have a few consciousness that's trying to swim upstream, you know. Now some of them are realizing like, oh shit, if we gather closer together, we have a better chance of getting up this stream. Now the consciousness that's going downstream, they know that. So they're keeping us separated from getting close to each other to swim upstream to make it, right? So that's why they keep us out of the collective. That's why they keep us out of our collective. They're already in their collective, but they keep us from reaching our collective so that way that we won't make it. They keep us in our personal mind or try to create trauma or some type of crisis in our life and then tell us to go heal. If we feel like we heal, they feel like they got to be the one to create the problem and then tell you to go heal again. You get what I'm saying? But if we once we realize that, damn, I'm a part of a conscious, I got to get more people in my conscious to swim upstream with me. That's how I make it further upstream. Swimming upstream by yourself is a losing battle. Swimming, I promise you, swimming upstream by yourself is a losing battle. But as soon as you start gathering with other people of that same conscious, right? Now it becomes easier. You're like, oh, okay, shit. You ever be like, listen, I used to do this all the time with my baby mom, right? Because she's little, she's small. She's like 5'3" or something like that. Right. So whenever we was walking uphill, I would put my hand on her lower back and push her up the hill, right? She'd be like, man, it's so much easier when you do that. When you like help me a little bit up this hill, like she's like, the walk is easier, right? And then it became like a habit. Like every time we walking up the hill, she'd be like, can you do that? Can you do that one thing? Like, I'm getting tired. Can you just push me a little bit up the hill? Like literally, I would walk like just with my hand on her lower back, just pushing her up the hill. But what I'm saying is, it's a lot easier when we helping each other. You know what I mean? When the strong is looking at the weak and protecting their weaknesses to say, I got your back on it. You know what I mean? I got your back on this one. Once we realize that, we're more powerful together, right? More people will start unifying, right? Because the negative already unifying. The sexual deviance and stuff that's out here that exists, they already unifying. They already got their groups. They already in their collective. It's the people who's waking up to this new variation of consciousness that is not in a collective, and then they're pretending to be the collective that you want to be in. So when you get in there, they trauma bond with you and put you through shit all over again, and now you're a part of their collective unknowingly. and you don't even know that you didn't consent to it because they done tricked you, made you think that they was going in the same direction as you. Like, oh yeah, I'm trying to find this new version of myself and be more positive and so on and so forth. And they like, yeah, that's me too. That's right here. Come on, come on. And then you get over there and they're like, gotcha. They put you in a headlock and shit. Next thing you know, you like, what the hell? I didn't sign up to be re-traumatized. And you thinking that you giving your secrets to the right person. You tell, you know what I mean? You giving them information and confining them and stuff like that, and then they use everything that you said against you, and then the next thing you know, they throwing the stuff back in your face that you confided in them about. It's like telling somebody that your dad used to whoop you, and then after you start arguing with them, they say, "Now I see why your dad whooped you." Like, damn. I didn't tell you that so you can possibly use it as a weapon when you was ready. So that's where the discernment comes in. That's where I feel like we got to have discernment. We got to have discernment in this. This is where the Bible and stuff, it was telling us about Israel's consciousness, right? It was telling us about the conscious of Israel, right? So we took it into a physical complex and made it a physical story, but this was telling us how to develop the conscious of Israel. And now every time we try to put Israel's conscious back together, the carnal minded has already set up all of these different conundrums in order to fuck over Israel's true conscious. One's in the chat if that makes sense. Yeah, it's all inside of you. The seeds wake up when they're supposed to wake up. The seeds of Israel wake up.
There are 12 tribes which make up the entirety of the collective human gene pool on this planet. This identity has had many lifetimes and participated with the evolution cycles of the root races throughout the astrological precessions. The genetic modification of the 12 human tribes occurred when the assorted aliens decided to have a competing agenda on writing their genetic codes into the planetary brain and Stargate system, as well as intending alien hybridization on the Earth. However, the original 12 tribes were created as a part of the plan that became the Covenant of Paleodor to rescue the lost souls of Terra, which would be made easier when the gates opened during the Ascension cycle. When the 12D Christ ray was returned to the planet Earth in 2000, this meant that the Diamond Sun body could begin to be reassembled and embodied in sequences, and is the reason why many starseeds came to the Earth to help accomplish this mission. In this Paleodorian cycle, the Crystalla Eternal Life body was reassembled from the original Diamond Sun body template that was embodied in the first stage of the 5D Turan seeding, too.
So that's the thing about this, right? That certain people that are down here come to the realization who they are, right? And they realize that they are supposed to reach a certain collective in order to unify that collective or put that collective back together again. And that collective can be in a multitude of different people, right? It don't matter if you black, white, or anything like that, because once you realize what it is that you're connecting to, you realize that it's a consciousness that you're connecting to, right? And once you realize that conscious recognize you, right? But if there's confusion in that conscious, right, then that confusion will be placed upon you, right? So when you're reaching this consciousness and you're coming to the realization of the consciousness, right, then you got to realize, like, oh, people place confusion in our consciousness. That's why the people that's walking around that understand the multitudes of different dimensions and stuff, that's why they're acting the way that they're acting. That's why their minds are at a disarray, because they place confusion in our consciousness, right? So now you see a lot of us, we are out of touch with one another because of the simple fact that we're coming to the realization that we're multidimensional beings, but we can't speak about being multidimensional beings because someone has already deemed it taboo down here. Someone has already put a label on it down here, right? So the same way that we used to pray in secrecy using the signs of a fish over the houses that we would pray to, right? Or pray in, because when we would meet in secrecy, a lot of people don't remember this history because you guys wrote about it in books about how people who worship Christ in the time of Poseidon or the time of Pisces used the sign of a fish in order to pray because the pagans was unaliving people who followed the one true Christ, which goes back to the first century Christ, stuff that Aristotle wrote about, stuff that Plato wrote about, coming from Socrates. You got to the biblical stuff was written about stuff that Plato was writing about. Shakespeare had a little bit to do with writing the biblical text, but this was stuff Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, all of these philosophers, they studied something that nobody studied. They dared to challenge and question everything. That's the one thing Socrates said was basically question everything, right? A wise man knows that a wise man knows that he knows nothing at all, right? So it wasn't that he was the smartest in the room. It was the simple fact that knowledge is there. You just have to be one that's willing to sit and listen. And sometimes it might come in the form of the chaos might distract you from the knowledge that's in this world. But there's knowledge in everything that's in this world, everything that's happened in the human experience, just having a human interaction. Building conversations spark different variations of knowledge and thinking and so on and so forth, right? The interaction that we're supposed to have with one another, you can have a download later on. Like, oh man, through that conversation, it made me think about this, or through this conversation, it made me think about that. So coercing is something big. It's part of the human interaction. It makes us the mystery that we are, but it also opens up different variations of stargates or dimensions within the mind. This is where dementia comes from. They had to have a word to define it down here. So they just called it dementia, but really it's dimensions in the mind that are opening up, different variations of dimensions, right? It tells you right here. The stargates are within inside of us. It's a whole universe inside of you.
Many of us are at different stages of the ascension process. Yet at every level, with a sincere heart and conscious participation, we can access exactly what we require. The first suggestion is to meditate upon the 12-tree grid with intention to move through each personal sphere, knowing this is one's direct connection to each of the stargates of the earth and aspects of identity. Focusing on each 12-tree grid sphere starting at the first dimension level, 1 to 12, ask to know your main tribal identity within the 12 tribes and to receive the genetic time codes that main tribal identity requires. ES Community has many 12-tree grid meditations that one can devote specifically to this process. Once you feel connected to that dimension of tribal identity, you may feel called to meditate with the corresponding planetary emancipation grid work and Stargate meditation, PEG.
See? So it's like you got to first want to seek the knowledge of what a star family, star seed, planetary, whatever it is. You got to want to seek the knowledge for that, to realize that as above, so below. If you're connected to something below us, then you're connected to something above us. You have to realize the essence of what is that is breathed into our body, that is known as the Holy Spirit. So once you come into this conscious connection, now you got to sit down and come to the realization, what star seed, what star family, what light being am I from, right? And then once you realize that, you're meditating on these things as you're thinking about it, as you're concentrating on it, you're meditating on it. Sometimes it might come into the form of someone else coming to you, or you might just pick up your phone and start scrolling, and your phone might be like light seeds or star seeds, right? These are things like that your conscious is connecting, because the internet is also connected to the ether, right? So sometimes when you think something and you start scrolling Facebook or whatever it is that you scroll, the things that you were thinking is also popping up on your feed, right? And you might be like the things that you're talking about, like, man, I was talking about this the other day and I started scrolling TikTok, it started popping up. Or I mentioned this person's name the other day and I started scrolling and it popped up, right? But the Ethernet is connected to the internet, and the internet is connected to the Ethernet. The Ethernet is above, the internet is below, right? But it's still connected to that same consciousness, right? In a sense, right? So a lot of the things that you think will pop up in your algorithm. It will pop up in your algorithm. And the scary part is knowing it, right? I mean, you can tell yourself like, it just seems like it happened, but knowing it is the scary part, right? Because then you realize how AI is actually helping us, because AI is trying to point out the human error, right? Humans are what's bad, right? Because the programs that has to be programmed by a programmer, right? And if that programmer has malicious intent, then that is a human error, right? But AI is trying to show us our human error on how we divide instead of unify. We're not looking how to make things better. We're not looking at the solution. We're looking to capitalize off the problem that exists. That's the human error. If you look at the patterns of it, look at the victimizing society. People are looking at how to capitalize off of being a victim. People are looking at how to capitalize off of playing the villain. People are looking to how to capitalize because it is a repeated thing. It's a pattern of behavior. AI is showing us that pattern by, multiplying the level that it's looked at, right? So it's multiplying the human problem faster for us to fix it on a conscious level. On a conscious scale, we have to come to the realization, one, everything ain't for everybody. So different variations of unities, a lot of people are not going to be with. Why? Because division will always division. It's like, I mean, division will always divide. Like if there's a room for a separatist, someone who always trying to be like, you know what, why we got to keep the same rhetoric that everybody else is keeping? Come on, let's go over here and do this. Like there's always going to be someone that's trying to divide. In any collective, there's always going to be dividers. The problem is the dividers of this plane has outweighed the unifiers of this plane to the point where they're pretending to want to, unify only to divide some more, right? So now you have a multiple, it's the same thing with war. War will always bring more war. If you tell somebody, oh, we need to get rid of all the white people, right? Once they get rid of all the white people, what you think they're gonna do after that if the problem ain't solved? What you think they're gonna do after that? If they say we need to get rid of all the white people, oh, the problem not solved? That's because we got too many mixed people. Now we got to get rid of all the mixed people. Oh, the problem not solved? Oh, now we got too many light-skinned people. Now we got to get rid of all the light-skinned people. Oh, the problem not solved? Now we got too many brown-skinned people. Now we got to get rid of all the brown-skinned people. What the fuck? Y'all don't see that? The problem cannot be the solution. You cannot create another problem and say that's the solution. That shit doesn't make sense. That's why modern medicine is the way it is now, where they tell you it's going to solve your problem, but could have gas with oily discharge, possible thoughts of suicide, and a bunch of other shit. You just going in there just to get rid of a headache. They give you some shit that you come out with 2 more problems. You know what I'm saying? So this is why I always point out the patterns, you know. human behavioral patterns. We got to stop these patterns of human behavior. Otherwise, we're going to keep on falling victim to some more shit. Creating another problem can never be a solution. Creating another problem can never be a solution to a problem. You know? These people out here talking about something. I know the solution. 2 more problems. What? 2 more problems can never be the solution. You know? Think about the person who created like race and color and all of that shit. They had a big scheme like, okay, we're going to identify. And then they did a whole thing about identification. And then they're like, now we're going to divide. Like, muhahahaha. Muhahahaha. Like, motherfucker, I did not know you was going to identify just to divide again, you motherfucker. This is why I always say we got to be careful in this world. You know what I mean? We got to realize that it's the collective. You know what I mean? We got to realize that we got to, we got to link with the collective, with a collective. We got to put the collective back together. That's why I keep on telling y'all, join the Discord. Look, we had a small collective. And they was petrified of it. Imagine if we put that back together, but only better, right? We had a small collective and they were scared. They came against it. It was changing stuff. It was exposing reality. It was changing their reality as they knew it. Look how many people realities got changed from it. Just from us having pure intention, operating on pure intent, we changed a multitude of realities. Some for the good, some for the bad. Some people ain't make it. But we ain't never say everybody was going to make it. Although we want everybody is going to make it, we got to realize that everything ain't for everybody and everybody ain't going to make it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm coming to the realization of.
You like to talk a lot of smack. You spy and lie, you boast, always gotta do the most behind my back. When you're faced with all the facts, you switch right up, you don't remember all of that. Showing off like you're in a pageant, bragging on about your status. Little do they know there's a real dark method to your madness. All the hate you brew inside, tragic. From a monster to the victim, play the role so well, dramatic. Is that it? Moving on, now it's time for me to work, wave my magic wand. You're no match for me or the power of my tongue. Let me show you how it's done. I can too terrorize you for fun. Demon be gone. You're a narcissist, can't hide it when it shows. Tied down by your traumas and now they won't let you go. You're a narcissist, a reaction is your aim. I'll just give you nothing, watch you lose at your own game.
Oh, can y'all hear me now? Oh, I was saying like when the Lucifer comet entered back into the Lyran constellation, everybody that was of that Lyra consciousness received a bunch of knowledge and stuff. Everybody that that was a part of that Lyran consciousness, they woke up down here. And everybody got what they were asking for. Some people asked for money, some people was asking for the desire, some people was asking to be needed, some people was asking to be wanted, some people was asking to be liked. you know a lot of different people that was in the Lyran constellation, they were asking for different stuff. Everybody got what they deserve, you know what I mean, or what they was asking for. But some people was asking for knowledge, some people was asking for the wisdom to give people a certain level of clarity, and so on and so forth. you know those are the ones who might be operating in their angelic self or trying to go into the operation of their angelic self. The problem is the other ones also know. So they mad at what you choose, and they're trying to come against what they're trying to use what they choose to come against what you choose. So they're using the carnal minded stuff, the material stuff that they gain, right? They're using it to come against your ascension process right now as you try to ascend, from the bottom with nothing, so on and so on. This is why they try to make you feel a certain way about being broke or not having money or this, that, and the third, because they knew that it was a time that you were going to wake up and you wasn't going to have finances or friends and so on and so forth. So they're using their materialistic gain, their carnal world and carnal desires as a way to keep you from your ascension process. That was the argument and the time of the ascension. They never wanted us to ascend. They never wanted us to make it. That's what the argument always been. During the time of ascension, will you allow the ones to ascend to ascend? Because everybody's not ascending in that time. So now they like, this is what they're showing you. They're showing you no. No, we don't want y'all to ascend. No, we don't want y'all in the higher consciousness of oneself. No, that's what they showing us. It's like saying we don't want y'all to have a collective, you know. But trapping one of us is like having a genie in a bottle. You know what I mean? When they find one of us, like trapping one of us is like having a genie in a bottle, because they know our intentions are pure. So whatever we put our intentions on seems to develop or happen a lot faster. So they'll rather trap one of us, you know, like a rabbit foot, as opposed to letting us actually connect or find each other. Does that make sense? Can y'all hear me? Or did it freeze? Yeah, I guess we're gonna end the live if it's frozen. No, no, don't act like y'all can hear me now. No, I'm joking. Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. Uh, uh. So yeah, this is what we're going through right now, and certain people, uh, you know, certain people are ascending, you know, into this Kratos, which is a time of Christ consciousness, so on and so forth. They knew that this was going to happen during the 13th lunar cycle, during the Aquarius sky. They knew that this was going to happen. They knew that indigo, star seeds, light beings was going to come into this variation of light body with around their etheric, self, right? They knew we were going to come into this. They knew we was going to come into this. Personal Christ, Pallador cell, light sound cell, 10, 11, and 12, right? Mother and father, right? They knew we were going to come into this grander understanding of ourselves, right? And they have prepared for this. They have prepared through different levels of stories, so on and so forth. They have prepared. Like, imagine some people knowing that you're going to come into a personal Christ of yourself before you come into a personal Christ of yourself. Huh? Imagine people knowing you're going to come into a personal Christ of yourself before you came into a personal Christ of yourself, and understanding the 369 positioning of the vessel. See, they didn't tell you about the 12. That was the one he left out. It's actually 369, 12 of oneself, right? But they left out this. Maybe that was the knowledge of free energy, and they didn't want to tell people about free energy. So they was like, leave off the 12.
In this activation for higher embodiment, the resonance points for the main energy centers in the physical body have shifted higher, slightly changing their position and adding more light body architecture to the skull, head, and crown. The changes to the skull and crown have resulted in cranial and sinus pressure, aches and pains in the entire bone matrix, with particular emphasis on the skull, foramen magnum, and sphenoid bone. The bone marrow relays intelligent information to the bloodstream and throughout the central nervous system to the brain, and thus the entire bone matrix has been potentially overactive with several sequential light body transmissions. The third-dimensional layers of the 1D and 2D frequency wave spectrums, the reversal nets and their energy centers, such as the 2D, 4D split shadow body, are completely dissolved and membranes gone, leaving a solar sacrum and higher position for the still point and conscious identity above the navel. With the diamond sun body activation for the eternal light body in 5D, all separated electromagnetic fields in the light body release their polarization membranes and electromagnetic barriers, merging the male-female counter-rotation spirals into a large orb of light surrounding the body. There are 3 main orb bodies nested within each other that are built on a trinity of triangles that align in the central vertical channel as the new position for the 3rd sphere, 6th sphere, 9th sphere, and then the personal Christ at the 12th sphere. These main energy spheres are located on the central column and are merged into a tri-wave neutral charge, or non-polarized energy centers.
See? So like when you get into the 369, of this is where your development comes in, right? You're developing a personal Christ within inside the vessel, right? Now, connecting directly with God and Christ, however you look at it, these are different variations of information too, right? So you might have to go through these Marahata identities in order to get there, right? These are life force, key life force, like key Rasha. All of these are different key life force, so on and so forth, right? But a lot of people don't make it through these dark nights of the soul, these different variations of personas in order to make it, right? But once you get into the etheric body, this is where the dark matter and so on and so forth. This is where your Rasha, key Rasha energy comes in. Everything like that, right? This is where they are studying like the dark matter. Some people collect dark matter around their body more than other people. You can manipulate that dark matter that you can collect around the body, right? Because around your etheric body, it's a magnet. So you can manipulate this. A lot of people are trying to find the people who consciousness can manipulate this and manipulate them. So a lot of people are looking for those people whose conscious can manipulate this and manipulate them. Like hence Christian Rock. Christian Rock has a way of manipulating people because her conscious is being manipulated. So the people that's a part of that conscious collective, they are being manipulated as well, if that makes sense.
The merge between universal Partiki grids of the cosmic twinned universal Melchizedek suns is reconnecting with the Sunstar networks, which are securing the Adandra White Rainbow complex for the founder's solar Rishiresha. This next level merge is allowing for the restoration of the dark matter Rasha spans and Rasha ring sound tones, which are the corrective measures for dark matter corruption and for rebuilding the primary gender twin matrix in the universal Kimalohadia. Thus, significant architectural shifts are occurring within the entire planetary matrix, and for the purpose of focusing upon current themes, our directed attention is upon the radically shifting interior of the subterranean areas of the planet, which correlate to the Rasha body instruction sets being significantly upgraded through the Rasha spans in order to alchemically transform the elemental fields that exist within all dimensional states of consciousness on the planet. These upgrades to the Rasha body instruction sets are unprecedented in that angelic humans have never coexisted upon an ascending planet during the Rasha cycle while undergoing this level of interior construction that is rearranging the main powers of cosmic intelligence hidden within all of creation. This is especially impacting the three main primal qualities that are contained within the subtle forces of consciousness existing throughout the universes. The three primal forces of electromagnetism have been discussed previously in terms of positive polarity, negative polarity, and neutral forces, or yellow, black and white subtle forces respectively, Geomagnetism March 2017. These energy units are currently being expanded to describe the divine scalar language of God and Spirit through the subunits of Partika, electrical, and Particum, magnetic, which form into strands of Partiki grids, particle and antiparticle. These living light sound grids form into all energetic substances, breathing in and breathing out, expanding and contracting to energetically connect with the consciousness gestalts of cosmic energies found throughout the unified fields that are linked into the parallels. In this way we can connect with the smallest units found within the building blocks of creation, Partiki, which are the energetic source or identity of God, the organic consciousness units of the eternal substance of God that is found within all things. Currently there are differences denoted between Partiki grids associated with various stages of matter, such as semi-etheric and etheric, while Partiki grids are associated with various stages of dark matter, and are being utilized to describe the incoming transmissions of Rasha body instruction sets during the Rasha cycle. When we entered the cosmic energy cycle during the hierogamic event of the cosmic twinned universal Melchizedek suns, every living being, angelic human in this universe began to merge some layer with the Partiki grid of their spiritual double or gender twin that exists in the parallel universe.
See that? So it says, somewhere your angelic being has emerged with your etheric light body or your partiki in some sort of way through a spirit double or whatever, either through the masculine side or the feminine side. An angelic being is trying to tell you, hey, listen, I'm here. Talk to me. Now, you might be fighting that off. You might be fighting that version of yourself off right now. You might be, in recognition of the shadow version of yourself or a different version of yourself. You might be in recognition of that. You might see the resemblance of that through a multitude of different people. And some people might be trying to manipulate your intent, get you to put your intentions on them. So all of the things that they foresee can come true and so on and so forth. Right. But they're not wishing good intent on you. No, but they know if you put your intentions on them, great things will happen for them. They know that. right? They know through you, great things can happen for them just with your intent. Now they're gonna make you feel like you ain't shit and you ain't this and you ain't that. But they know by you putting your intentions on them, they become greater. And they supposed to be doing the same thing for you so you could become greater. But they not. Because they probably operate off of, some form of jealousy, envy, hurt, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? They probably operate like that. They gonna do that, smile in your face, making you think that they align with you and all of that stuff, but not really. You'll feel it. And when bad things start happening for you, you're gonna realize exactly where it's coming from. Unless you got that return to sender, if you got that return to sender, then you're gonna see exactly where it's coming from. Because the shit gonna be happening for the people that's, got ill intent on you. You know what I mean?
I'm a content creator.
It's okay.
This is my
Yeah, have a great day, man. If nobody told y'all that they love y'all today, let me be the first but not the last to tell you I love you.
Nigga, we made it.
Remember, one image of oneself should be greater than reality.
Hate spreading to no end. Viral emptiness, no substance. Stop hogging the spotlight and just share that ish. It goes a longer way when you spread that ish. Make it rain, just spray that ish. Real chosen ones out here to change that ish. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick. Get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick. Get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. Algorithms don't move us. We move to rhythm of truth in us. Hating on love in your sleep. Time is up, now we numbers deep.
Whoa.
One love in multiple forms. Vibrating contrary to norms. Creating waves worldwide. Elevating frequencies high. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick. Get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. From TikTok to YouTube to Twitch to Kick. Get with it, we built it, you can't flip me dip it. You can't flip the script.
Whoa.
You're having a lecture. Get with it, we built it. You can't flip a dip it.
These people don't understand. Stop trying to hog the spotlight and share that shit.
We're off DaWise. Talk to him.
We built this. To the moon. To the moon, Alice.
I'm a content creator.
It's okay.
This is my